Tjun, our filthy was sitting quietly in a cafe, observing the people around him and listening to the conversations of a couple seated nearby. He noticed that the boyfriend asked his girlfriend whether she wanted to go somewhere else after spending so much time walking around. In response, the girlfriend said that it was already time for them to check into their accommodation. The boyfriend then remarked that they had put so much effort into just having this date and that it would be a shame to check into the hotel so soon. The girl replied that she had been wearing heels all day and that her feet were hurting badly from walking around for so long. Hearing this, the boyfriend suggested they drive directly to their accommodation and check in. She agreed immediately, saying yes, without hesitation. However, deep inside, the girl was thinking to herself that she loved how clueless he was and that she only wanted to hurry so that he could have a wholesome cardio training session with her. Outwardly, she looked at him sweetly and thanked him for being considerate and understanding. Tjun, who had been watching and listening to their exchange, could not help but smirk slightly at their hidden intentions. After some time, another girl was sitting alone at a nearby table. She appeared to be waiting for someone and was thinking that she was supposed to be on a blind date. She felt irritated and kept thinking that she could not be bothered to meet the person. She wondered what she should do during the date and how she should behave. As her thoughts continued, she even considered the possibility that she might call the man and sleep with him that same day. Soon after, another couple walked past Tjun. The girlfriend was speaking out loud and saying that the most important thing when seeing someone was what was inside their heart. However, deep down, her own thoughts were focused on the idea of having a workout session rather than emotional connection. Tjun observed all these people carefully and then spoke to himself in his mind, saying that he could clearly see the desires of the people around him. One day, Tjun was walking with his aunt, Yojin, who was completely drunk. He was supporting her as she struggled to walk properly. She affectionately called him dear and said that he had already grown into a man and that time really flew by quickly. Tjun looked worried and gently asked her to try to walk straight and be careful. She then told him that he was still her little boy, but that he was now a university student and had been admitted to Korean University, which was a great achievement. Tjun replied that it was already the 4th time she had said the same thing. Hearing this, she burst into laughter and told him that he was very handsome and tall and that he must be very popular with the ladies. She added that she was proud of him for working so hard to get admitted. She also told him that if he ever got a girlfriend, she hoped he would never forget about her. Tjun assured her that he would never forget her. At that moment, he thought to himself that the woman walking in front of him was the only family he had left in the world. He then told her how much he loved her and called her his dear aunt. She smiled and replied that she loved him very much too. He reflected deeply and thought about his life, reminding himself that his name was Kang Tjun and that he had once been a boy filled with many desires and dreams, hoping to accomplish many things in the future. However, everything changed when his parents died in a tragic car accident. From that moment, his life completely hit rock bottom. He remembered how, after the tragic death of his parents, the people around him spoke with pity and sadness. Some of them said that they felt very sorry for the little boy and wondered what would happen to him now that his family was gone. Others remarked that his family had not been well off and that the situation would be even more difficult because the economy was not doing well. They discussed among themselves that perhaps someone would have to take responsibility for taking care of him. During these conversations, Yojin approached him and gently asked if he was really Tjun. She reached out her hand and introduced herself as his aunt. She told him that he must be very scared but that everything would be fine soon. She then hugged him tightly and assured him that from that day onward, he would live with her. Returning to the present, Tjun thought about how his life had changed from that day forward. He began living with his aunt, whom he had met for the first time when he was very young. She was the CEO of a successful online shopping brand and was extremely capable in business. Because of her success, their life became very comfortable. Even though she was always busy with work, she took excellent care of him and allowed him to live happily without worrying about basic needs or security. One day, both of them were standing on the rooftop terrace. His aunt was washing a blanket in a tub of water using her feet. Tjun stood behind her and asked whether she really had to wash the blanket up there, pointing out that it was very cold outside. He also suggested that she could simply put the blanket into the washing machine instead. She replied that it seemed he did not understand such things and explained that washing the blanket with her feet made it much cleaner. Tjun responded that he was not a child anymore and asked her to cover herself properly. She laughed and reminded him that he used to wrap himself in that same blanket when he was younger. As he watched her, he thought to himself that anyone who saw her would consider her a kind, beautiful, and lovely woman. She then told him that it would only take a little while and that they would eat together once she finished washing the blanket. At that moment, Tjun realized that this was perhaps the reason he had gradually begun to feel affection toward her. He hated himself for having such feelings toward the very aunt who had taken care of him and raised him when he had nothing and no one else in the world. In order to suppress those feelings, he distracted himself by studying and working out obsessively. He spent most of his time outside the house, pouring all of his energy into exhausting activities so that he would not have to confront those desires. He believed that his feelings for her had slowly weakened and eventually disappeared. He convinced himself that those emotions had finally ended and that he had completely overcome them. One night, Tjun entered her room while she was sleeping. He stood quietly near the bed and looked at her for a long moment. As he watched her, he began thinking to himself that his behavior was ridiculous, yet he felt tempted and wondered if it might be acceptable to touch her just a little. He tried to justify his thoughts by telling himself that they were not related by blood. He also reasoned that since she was drunk, there was no way she would remember anything. He convinced himself that he would only take a brief look and nothing more. He remained standing there, staring at her face and carefully observing her melons. In his thoughts, he noticed how large her melons looked while she slept. He wondered whether she might be sensing something even in her dreams. His mind became more disturbed, and he thought that perhaps it would be alright if he tried to perform the wholesome cardio training beside her. However, at that very moment, he felt as if she was about to wake up. Fear suddenly rushed through him, and without making any sound, he quickly left her room. As soon as he stepped outside, guilt and shame filled his mind. He thought to himself that he should never have entered her room and that he should have controlled himself just as he had done until now. He reflected that something inside him had changed all of a sudden and that he could not believe he had allowed alcohol to become an excuse for losing his sense of reason. He worried that she might have woken up while he was standing there. He then remembered an earlier incident from some time ago when she had woken up and found him in her room. On that occasion, she had asked him directly whether he had been looking at her while she was sleeping. After hearing her question, he had immediately left the room. At that time, he had thought that something strange had happened to him and that perhaps it was because he had been drunk. After these thoughts, he returned to his own room. Morning eventually arrived, but he had not been able to sleep at all throughout the night. He sat on his bed, looking completely exhausted and weak. While sitting there, he heard her voice calling out to him and asking him to wake up. He thought to himself that he had not slept even for a single moment. He finally stood up, got ready, and prepared to leave the house. As he passed through the kitchen, he saw her there, busy cooking breakfast. She noticed him and asked if he had finally woken up. She added that breakfast was almost ready. The table was already covered with many dishes that she had prepared. While standing there, he thought to himself that he had lost the entire night's sleep because he could not stop thinking about her. She then began explaining the breakfast menu and telling him what she had cooked. As he listened to her, another thought crossed his mind that he was still living with her in the same house. He realized that it was impossible for him to be certain that everything that had happened the previous night would never happen again. He admitted to himself that he could not be confident that he would always be able to control those thoughts in the future. Before she could finish describing the breakfast menu, he suddenly spoke and told her that he had decided to move out of the house. She stood there in complete shock and surprise and asked him why he had suddenly decided to leave her home so abruptly. He explained that he was still attending school and described everything that was currently happening there. She listened carefully and then began asking him several questions. First, she wanted to know whether he was planning to leave on his own. After that, she asked if he had thought about what he would do regarding money. She questioned whether he intended to take a part-time job and how he planned to support himself. She also inquired about his food and daily living arrangements and asked how he would manage all of those responsibilities by himself. Then, she warned him in a serious tone that she was sure he would end up spending all of his money every day on takeout food instead of preparing proper meals. Finally, she asked him how often he would come to visit her after leaving. At that moment, his strange magical ability suddenly began working. When he looked at her, he realized that she desired him and wanted to feel his touch again, just as she had felt the day before. She stood in front of him and told him firmly that he could not make such a bold and sudden decision without informing her first. He remained standing there in complete shock as he noticed her desire hovering above her head. Seeing this made him realize something important, that she was also interested in him, and her feelings were not as simple as he had thought before. While he became deeply lost in his thoughts, she noticed that he was not paying attention to her words anymore. She asked him if he was even listening to what she was saying. Instead of answering her properly, he rushed and turned and walked toward the door, signaling that he had to go to class. She stayed behind, standing there in confusion, trying to understand his strange behavior. Before he could leave completely, she told him that he should at least eat something before going. However, he did not listen to her advice and left without responding. As he walked along the road, his mind was filled with everything that had just happened. He kept thinking about her words and about what he had seen above her head. He wondered whether what he had witnessed was truly what she had been thinking at that moment. More importantly, he remembered that the day before, he had been awake in her room, and yet she had not said anything about it. He could not understand why she had remained silent. Suddenly, while walking without paying attention to his surroundings, he accidentally bumped into a schoolgirl. The impact caused her to fall to the ground. He immediately became worried and apologized, asking her if she was hurt and whether she was okay. The schoolgirl stood up and told him that she was fine. At that moment, he saw her desire and realized that she was thinking that he had a very nice body and that she wanted to touch him. After that, she said that it was actually her fault for not looking where she was going. He felt completely surprised and confused by what he had just witnessed. He began to think that it was not only the first woman who had such thoughts about him. Suddenly, he noticed another woman nearby. He could also see her desire clearly, and she was thinking to herself that she wondered whether he would like to date an older woman like her. At the same time, he noticed another man who was looking at that woman and thinking that her balloons were very large and attractive. Lost in this unsettling observation, he proceeded to the cafeteria, where he was scheduled to meet with his group members for their project discussion. Upon entering, he noticed 3 girls sitting around the table, quietly exchanging glances and preparing themselves for the meeting. The first girl spoke up, suggesting that they should all introduce themselves properly before diving into the team project. She began by saying that she was a 20-year-old student, providing her student number as 2023. The girl sitting next to her, however, immediately challenged her statement. She pointed out that the first girl had left out a year, claiming she was actually 21 and accusing her of lying about her age. The first girl, slightly flustered, quickly retorted, telling her not to say such things. She added, somewhat defensively, that laws regarding age had changed and that since her birthday had passed, she would now speak without honorifics. Meanwhile, Tjun sat quietly, almost detached from the conversation, completely absorbed in his own thoughts. He recalled vividly the strange and surprising vision he had seen earlier, texts hovering above his auntie's head, revealing her desires. Those words were linked to events from the previous day, yet when he saw his auntie that morning, she seemed entirely normal, her usual self. Tjun felt a wave of exhaustion sweep over him, overwhelmed by the mental strain of trying to reconcile what he had seen with what he knew to be reality. He realized that he could not focus properly at that moment and that the ability to perceive the desires above people's heads seemed to have vanished. As he continued to watch his group members, he noticed 2 of the girls laughing quietly together, sharing a private joke. Tjun reflected that earlier in the day he had been able to see similar texts above people's heads, but now, he questioned himself, wondering if he had been mistaken before. Perhaps the text had never been real, and yet he was not entirely convinced, feeling a lingering doubt about what was real and what was imagined. One of the girls turned her attention to him and asked for his name. Tjun responded politely, introducing himself as Kang Tjun, 20 years old, with the student number 2023. Sitting beside him, another student nervously introduced herself as Park Minyong, also providing the same student number, 2023. She seemed tense, fidgeting slightly as she spoke. Another girl at the table offered a reassuring smile, expressing her hope that they would all get along well with Minyong, to which Minyong responded quietly with agreement, though her nervousness remained evident. Tjun allowed himself a brief moment to observe his team members, noting that they appeared agreeable and without any apparent conflicts. He placed his laptop on the table and explained that he would individually research the market and upload his findings by the next day so that they could prepare their presentation. He suggested that the rest of the discussion could be reserved for the next meeting. One of the girls nodded in acknowledgement, commenting that, since Tjun had organized everything, they would be able to finish the work quickly. Tjun paused to ask whether anyone had any complaints about the arrangement. The girl reassured him that everything was fine, and there were no objections. Minyong, agreeing that she thought the plan was good and acceptable. Turning his attention to Minyong, Tjun asked if she had any opinions regarding the project, or if there was any specific role or topic she would like to handle. Minyong's nervousness became apparent as she hesitated, then replied that he should simply tell her what to do, and she would do her best. Tjun acknowledged her response, telling her that if she thought of anything later, she should let him know. Minyong nodded, saying okay. After a brief pause, Tjun mentioned that he would go and get the drinks for the group. Before he could even rise from his seat, Minyong stood up, insisting that she would take care of it herself. Tjun, concerned that she might trouble herself unnecessarily, quickly told her not to worry and encouraged her to remain seated. Minyong, however, responded confidently that it was fine since she was closer to the counter. As she moved forward, her foot caught on something, and she nearly lost her balance, stumbling toward the floor. Acting on instinct, Tjun reached out and caught her hand, steadying her just in time to prevent her from falling. With a mix of concern and curiosity, he asked if she was all right. Minyong, her Her face tinged with a blush and her voice slightly shaky, assured him that she was fine. Taejin's mind immediately went back to the strange experience he had witnessed that morning. He realized that what he was seeing now, her desire hovering above her head, was reminiscent of that earlier, surreal moment. Taejin silently noted that this confirmed his suspicions that it was not merely a mistake or a trick of his imagination. He recognized that his perception was revealing something genuine about her thoughts. At the same time, he understood that his auntie, who had seemed normal and composed that morning, truly had no outward signs of knowing what had transpired the previous day, but internally, she must have been aware of everything. Standing there, Minyong looked completely flustered, her posture stiff with embarrassment. She asked if he could release her hand now, her voice small and hesitant. Before Taejin could respond, one of the other group members intervened, teasing both of them. She asked if there was something going on between them, remarking playfully that both of them looked so cool together. Minyong, visibly flustered, quickly stepped back and excused herself, saying that she would return shortly. Taejin remained standing, his gaze lingering on the hovering text above her head. He reflected that, until this moment, he had not been able to see such thoughts, and now he was unsure whether the appearance of the text had been triggered by the brief physical contact he had made with Minyong, or by some other reason. Whatever the cause, he could not deny that the text seemed to reveal her genuine inner thoughts, and he reminded himself that he would need to seek out his auntie later that evening to understand her true feelings as well. The brief tension of the moment was interrupted when another girl addressed Taejin, complimenting him on how well he conducted the meeting. Taejin responded modestly, insisting that it was nothing. The girl continued, teasing him lightheartedly, saying that he reminded her of an office worker, even using the kind of expressions that actors often use in dramas. Another girl agreed with her observation, then asked Taejin whether he had learned those expressions intentionally. Taejin explained that he had not made any special effort to learn them. In the late evening, Choi Yojin found herself sliding into a taxi, the exhaustion of the day weighing heavily on her. As the car moved through the quiet streets, her mind replayed the events with Taejin earlier, the dizziness in her head making her feel slightly off balance. When the driver announced that they had arrived, she stepped out carefully and thanked him. Her head was spinning, and she wondered if she had overindulged, not in drink alone, but in the emotional turmoil caused by her encounter with Taejin. She chastised herself inwardly for caring so much when he had said he wanted to leave alone, though she could not fully understand why it had affected her so deeply. She resolved that she would speak to him when he came home, to clear the tension and express her feelings properly. To her surprise, as she gathered her thoughts, she realized that Taejin was already standing there. He stepped closer, his expression calm but attentive, asking if she had just gotten off work. Yojin, trying to maintain her composure, gestured toward the building and suggested that they head inside for now, leaving any serious discussion for later. As they entered the building together, the soft of the elevator surrounded them. Taejin observed her carefully, his thoughts racing. He realized that he might be in trouble, and if she was angry, it would not be easy for her to let it pass. Though she was typically kind and warm, she could be surprisingly firm and stubborn when she wanted to be. It was difficult to confirm her true feelings at the moment. The memory of his earlier decision to leave alone made him recognize that he needed to acknowledge his mistake and be prepared to make amends. When they reached her apartment, Yojin instructed him to take a shower while she prepared the food. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of her exhaustion. She admitted that she was too tired to eat and suggested that he could eat on his own if he was hungry. Taejin, however, held up a bag of dessert and explained that he wanted to know her opinion about it. He remarked that sweets were especially enjoyable when one was tired, hoping it might lift her spirits. Yojin looked at him and asking why he had brought dessert all of a sudden. Taejin explained that he had noticed she must be tired, likely because of him, so he had taken the trouble to bring something small and sweet to cheer her up. Despite her continued weariness, she insisted that it was okay, saying she did not have much appetite and that he could simply eat it alone. Taejin smiled gently and reassured her that he had gone straight to the sweet shop immediately after class, making a special effort just so he could share it with her. Knowing that she liked custard cream bread, he had made sure to bring it for her, hoping to offer a small comfort after a long and tiring day. Taejin stood there, feeling a flush of embarrassment rise to his cheeks as he tried to find the right words. He apologized earnestly for everything he had said earlier that morning, acknowledging that he had acted too hastily without discussing his decision with her first. He admitted to himself that he had been careless and expressed regret for any worry or discomfort he had caused. He reminded Yojin, and perhaps himself as well, that when it came to family, they only had each other to rely on, and his tone conveyed a genuine, heartfelt sincerity. Yojin's expression softened as she listened, and slowly a small, gentle smile spread across her face. She reassured him that it was all right now, especially since he had recognized his own mistake. She admitted that she had been truly surprised when he had suddenly mentioned that he wanted to leave alone earlier. Then she asked whether he had eaten dinner yet, checking on him as she had always done, revealing her nurturing nature. Before she could say more, Tjun stepped quietly behind her and wrapped his arms around her in a warm embrace. The sudden gesture startled her, and she stiffened momentarily in surprise. His voice, soft and full of gratitude, broke the silence as he whispered that, as expected, he was the only one he truly had by his side. Yojin, her surprise gradually melting into warmth, responded that she was glad he felt that way. As Tjun held her, he glanced upward, noticing the faint hovering of her desire once again. He reflected silently, observing the words above her head and thinking that, perhaps, his prediction about her thoughts had been correct. Meanwhile, Yojin's attention returned to practical matters. She told him that she would prepare his favorite side dish for dinner. Tjun, touched by her consideration, asked if she truly meant what she said. He thanked her sincerely, noting that she always thought of him with such attentiveness and care. Yojin, slightly amused and yet earnest, reminded him that she cared for him no differently than his own mother would. Tjun continued to watch her closely, taking in her gestures, her expression, the subtle tension in her posture. Above her head, her desire revealed her innermost thoughts that she wished that he could see her not just as family, but as a woman, with feelings and desires of her own. Tjun was standing in a crowded public area outside of his college where many people were engaged in conversations. Some were complimenting each other on their work, exchanging smiles and nods, while others discussed the idea of going to eat something delicious that day, debating which restaurant would be best. A few people were talking about heading home to rest, sharing stories of how tiring their days had been. Tjun listened quietly, absorbing the ambient chatter. He wondered, almost absent-mindedly, why he was even standing there. Aunty was busy, as usual, immersed in her work, and he knew she would not be coming. He sighed softly and thought that perhaps it was time for him to go home. Suddenly, Yojin appeared from behind him. She looked at him with her usual warmth, by keeping her hands on his eyes, and asked if he realized who she was. Tjun paused for a moment, then recognition dawned on him, and she smiled, expressing that it was a surprise to see him. Tjun returned her smile, and remarked that he was surprised to see her, especially since she had mentioned that she was busy today. Yojin explained gently that it was the day of his college exams, and insisted that it had been impossible for her to miss coming. She encouraged him to tell her about the exam, asking whether he believed he had done well. Tjun admitted that he thought he had done great, a sense of quiet pride in his voice. She said she was glad to hear it, and added that someone who works so hard deserved something tasty to eat. She asked whether he would prefer beef or ribs. As they began walking together, Tjun tried to convince her to return to work, insisting that he was fine. Yojin, however, smiled gently and told him that he was more important to her. As they walked, Tjun's thoughts drifted inward. He reflected on the long path of his life and the fear that had accompanied him in his earliest days. When she had first taken him in, he had been terrified of everything the unknown, the responsibility, the fragility of relationships. He had been afraid that, like other relatives, she might leave him if he became a burden, and so he had closed himself off emotionally, pushing her away to avoid the pain of rejection. Yet, despite his fear and guardedness, she had patiently broken through his walls. He remembered his childhood vividly, how she would often ask if there was anything he wanted to eat, promising to make it for him. He had always shrugged, saying he was fine with anything, but she persisted with gentle curiosity, even asking if there was something specific he had been craving, especially as the holidays approached. Returning to the present, he noted Yojin's words once more, that he was the most important person to her. Tjun realized that it was through her unwavering warmth and care that he had grown into the man he had become. Memories of small, ordinary moments surfaced. A day he returned from the gym, calling out to Aunty, asking if she had eaten dinner yet, and feeling the comfort of her presence. He noticed that she did not say anything, and for a fleeting moment, he thought that perhaps she had stepped out of the house. Then, as his gaze wandered, he realized that the bathroom door was slightly ajar. A thought crossed his mind that she might simply be taking a shower, but another, sharper observation struck him, that she was so absent-minded at times that she had probably forgotten to close the door fully. The realization was so strange, and in that instant, he became aware of a new, unfamiliar emotion stirring within him toward her. As he watched her moving in the shower, he felt a growing pull in his chest, a longing that seemed to increase with every passing second. Yet, at the same time, a voice of reason whispered in his mind, reminding him that he needed to regain control over his actions. He chastised himself for lingering there, thinking that he should have retreated quietly to his own room instead of allowing himself to be caught in this moment. His attention then shifted when he noticed a piece of her clothing that had fallen into the laundry basket. Almost without thinking, he reached for it, picking it up and bringing it carefully into his room. Holding the fabric, he was struck by a warmth that seemed almost alive, a faint but unmistakable echo of her presence. The scent of her lingered subtly on the cloth, and as he breathed it in, he felt as though she were embracing him in that very instant. Silently, he apologized to her in his heart, feeling guilty. His thoughts began to wander, and he found himself imagining a future scenario in which they would be performing wholesome cardio training together. In his mind, she would reassure him gently, telling him it was all right and that she would take care of everything. He pictured himself shaking his protein bar, imagining her presence beside him, her words mingling with his every movement. In this vivid mental image, she would point out that he still behaved like a child and ask him whether he truly liked her as much as he thought. He could see himself confessing the depth of his feelings, and in return, she would tell him that he was the one she cherished most in the world. Slowly, in the theater of his mind, the two of them began training together. Suddenly, a practical thought intruded that he needed to clean the room before she finished her shower. The urgency of the mundane brought him briefly back to reality, anchoring him. Then he realized she had finished, and moments later, she emerged, asking if he wanted anything special for dinner and whether he had just returned home. As she opened the door, her eyes widened slightly in surprise at the sight of him in such a vulnerable state. She spoke gently, advising him to take care of himself before coming down for dinner. He began to respond, starting to ask her to wait, but before he could finish, she interrupted with a soft reassurance. She told him that his curiosity was natural at his age, but reminded him that, even though they were family, certain boundaries needed to be maintained. She concluded the conversation by saying that she would overlook what had happened today, trusting that he was a good kid who would follow her guidance in the future. He reflected quietly on her words, recognizing that she still seemed to view him as a child, a perception that had likely been true in the past. Yet now, standing before her, he noticed the subtle shift in her demeanor, the way her gaze lingered, the faint hover of desire in her eyes. It became clear to him that this was exactly what she had been thinking when she had pushed him away earlier. In that realization, a determination began to form within him. He resolved firmly that he would not allow her to keep him at a distance any longer. After that, they went into the bedroom, where she was lying on the bed. He was performing massages on her body, asking if she was feeling any better or more comfortable now. She replied that, yes, as he had always promised, his massages were truly the best, and that they seemed to ease the tension in her muscles in ways she had not anticipated. He smiled inwardly at her words and responded affirmatively, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. Reflecting for a moment on the time that had passed, he realized that he had not given her a massage since entering college, and the thought made him slightly regretful. Agreed, acknowledging that he was right and that she had indeed missed his careful touch. He then told her that he would need to give her massages more often from now on, as he noticed that her muscles were unusually tight, probably from fatigue or stress accumulated over time. He reassured her gently, explaining that he had been watching tutorials on the internet, studying the proper techniques, so she did not need to worry about the effectiveness or quality of the massage. As he spoke, he found himself thinking quietly, almost to himself, that he needed to understand her true feelings, her subtle reactions, and the real desires hidden behind her polite responses. After a moment of contemplation, he urged her to leave everything to him, encouraging her to relax and trust him completely. Once he had begun the initial massage, carefully kneading and pressing her thighs, he asked if she was feeling any better or if the pressure felt comfortable. She responded that it seemed the blood was circulating properly through her body, that she was beginning to feel relaxed, and that the tension she had carried all day was slowly melting away. At the same time, she noticed a sudden warmth spreading through her body, which caused her to pause for a moment. She thought to herself that this heat was probably due to the alcohol she had consumed earlier. She reasoned that it was making her feel unusually warm. Nevertheless, she concluded that if he continued the massage with the same care and skill, she would continue to feel better. After a while, she decided that she was feeling sufficiently relieved and stood up. She told him that she was fine now, that he could go, and that he must be tired from his efforts as well. Despite her composed words, she felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her and inwardly chastised herself, thinking she must be crazy for having such intrusive thoughts about his touch. She questioned whether she might actually be drunk, feeling somewhat flustered and unsure of her own reactions. He observed her carefully, the slight shifts in her posture, and the way her gaze lingered for a fraction longer than usual. He could sense her unspoken desires hovering around her, almost tangible in the quiet air between them. She, meanwhile, reflected silently on how good the massage had felt and realized that she wanted him to continue. She expressed her appreciation verbally. At the same time, he felt a pang of guilt whenever he looked at her, fully aware of his own desires that had begun to grow in intensity. His mind drifted back to a memory, recalling a previous day when she had commented on his development, noting that he was becoming a man. He remembered how she had assisted him in shaving his beard, carefully guiding him through the process, despite his own injury to his arm. She had instructed him to soften the hair with warm water first, then apply shaving cream thoroughly, and finally to shave with care and precision. She had asked for his opinion afterward, remarking that she had done better than he might have expected, and had humorously reminded him that, as the CEO of a shopping mall, tasks like these were easy for her. He thought about how he had always struggled with feelings of guilt and conflict regarding his desires for her, considering the motherly care she had provided him throughout his life. The memory was vivid that she had guided him with patience and understanding, and he had been painfully aware of the complexity of his emotions. After finishing the shave that day, she had told him that she was leaving, respecting her space, while she returned to her bed, asking for a few more minutes of rest and a moment of quiet. In that pause, he realized with clarity that there was no longer any reason to conceal his feelings. Returning to the present moment, as he applied a firm massage to her. Encouraged by this realization, he proposed that they perform wholesome cardio training together. She received the idea with a shocking attitude. He asked if she felt disappointed that their previous interaction had to end as it had, seeking to understand her perspective. After that, they began their wholesome cardio training together. After the wholesome cardio training, Yojin dozed off, resting quietly in the space, while Tjun remained seated beside her. He found himself questioning whether he had crossed a line with her during the session. It felt unusual, almost uncomfortable, because the system had clearly indicated that she enjoyed training alongside him. Yet, he could not shake the nagging uncertainty. Perhaps the system's readouts were not completely accurate. Maybe it reflected her true thoughts, or perhaps it only approximated them. The following morning, Yojin arrived at her office, her posture heavy with exhaustion. The weight of volume of work awaiting her made concentration nearly impossible. As she sat at her desk, she found her mind wandering relentlessly back to the events of the previous night. Every time she closed her eyes, vivid images from the session replayed in her memory. She chastised herself inwardly, thinking that she should not have agreed to conduct the workout session with Tjun, that perhaps it had been a mistake. Yet, no matter how much she tried to suppress her thoughts, a subtle thrill, a strange excitement, continued to stir within her. She realized that the harder she tried to push the memory away, the more it seemed to capture her attention. Unable to stop herself, she felt a sudden pang of uncertainty that how she is supposed to behave toward him now. Meanwhile, Tjun had shifted to a completely different setting, sitting inside a cinema as the lights dimmed and the film began to roll. Around him, the faint murmur of movie dialogues in front of him. He reminded himself that the class for which he had chosen this movie was an elective, taken purely for easy credits. There was no need to worry about studying, he thought. To his surprise, Minyong was also there, and she had chosen a seat right beside him. Glancing at her, he asked casually if she needed to say something. She shook her head lightly, explaining that she had been concerned about picking a movie too racy for a class assignment, worried that it might be inappropriate for the context. Tjun reassured her gently, insisting that it was fine and that he enjoyed the film. No matter how hard he tried to immerse himself in the story unfolding on the screen, his thoughts refused to stay with the movie. They drifted persistently back to the cardio session with Yojin, a memory that he could hardly believe had actually taken place. Then, without warning, a status window materialized in front of him, bright and sudden, against the dim cinema light. The message read that the target desire has been consumed. He recognized the window. It was the same status display that had appeared after the wholesome cardio training. The realization struck him sharply that there was still so much about his hidden ability that he did not understand. He now knew with certainty that the ability allowed him to perceive the desires and thoughts of others, and how to use it effectively remained an open question. He suddenly noticed a flicker of desire in Minyong, realizing that she was trying to hide her interest in certain exciting things. She, on her part, thought that she did not want him to find out about her secret preferences. He understood that this was likely the intention behind her actions. Then, Minyong removed her jacket, commenting on how warm it was, and asked if he needed to say anything. He replied that it was nothing, though his attention remained fully on her. He suggested that including certain scenes from the movie would fit their assignment well. She questioned whether he meant the part where the male and female leads reunite, expressing concern that it might be too inappropriate to include in their presentation. He explained that he thought the scenes matched the theme of the movie quite well. She agreed and admitted that perhaps they should have chosen a topic that aligned better with the theme. Before he could respond, she continued, giving an example, and he found himself thinking how articulate she was, noting that she seemed very different outside of the school environment. Suddenly, she glanced at the hotel, and a hint of shyness crossed her face. He asked if she wanted to go inside, but she refused. He noticed, however, that she kept looking at it. When he pointed this out, she quickly denied it, yet he admitted that he was curious as well. Feeling a shared sense of intrigue, he decided they should check it out together and gently grabbed her hand to lead her inside the hotel, which had a distinctly romantic theme. As they entered, he reflected that he had not expected her to be interested in something like this. Meanwhile, he realized that the status window had not popped up, signaling some digital cue. She mentioned that she had already taken a good look around, suggesting they should leave the store. He agreed and thought that she had always been quite shy. Suddenly, the status window appeared, revealing her hidden desire to perform wholesome cardio training with him. He was utterly shocked, thinking that he had assumed she was a normal girl and had no idea she was interested in something like this. It was far beyond what he had expected. Overwhelmed but intrigued, he called out her name and invited her to finish the rest of the assignment at his place, reasoning that he could not ignore her desire when it was so evident. Minyong had felt a wave of hesitation when Tjun had offered, unsure how to respond. She found the idea of going to his place a little embarrassing and awkward. She also noticed the time and realized it was getting late, so she suggested they could postpone working on the assignment until the next time. Tjun, sensing that he might have been a bit too impatient in his eagerness to finish the work, nodded and accepted her words. He reassured her calmly that it was fine and said he would see her at school the following day, bidding her goodbye with a gentle tone. The next day, Minyong sat in class, her mind occupied with thoughts about the previous evening. She scolded herself inwardly, feeling frustrated with her own behavior. She realized that she did not have to overreact and he only wanted to work on the assignment. She was so foolish to make it awkward. She worried that Tjun might have found the whole situation uncomfortable and wished she could take back her words. She resolved quietly that she should be more thoughtful about how she responded in the future. Suddenly, Tjun approached her, his presence noticeable as he came near. He asked politely if she had gotten home safely, to which she responded affirmatively, then turned the question toward him. After a brief exchange, he pulled out an issue paper and gently began cleaning her glasses, remarking casually that the class had ended. Then, with a slight smile, he asked if she would like to have lunch with him. She agreed, and together they left the college. Tjun suggested a ramen place near the back entrance, commenting enthusiastically that it was particularly delicious. During their walk, Minyong found herself needing to apologize for her overreaction the previous night. She explained that she had misunderstood his intentions and had not expected anything inappropriate. Tjun listened quietly, observing her carefully, trying to gauge her true feelings. Internally, he wondered if this moment could allow them to reconnect and realized that, if it didn't work out, their relationship might be seriously affected. Despite his inner tension, he reassured her in a lighthearted tone that there was no need to apologize for something so minor. As they continued walking, he lightly tapped her cake and asked if she was okay. Immediately, he felt a pang of embarrassment at having acted without thinking. He reminded himself that he often spent time with male friends in similar casual ways and had simply acted out of habit. Minyong, noticing no particular concern, brushed it off, saying it was just a mistake. Tjun observed her reaction, realizing that she was not making a big deal out of it, and understood that this signaled something deeper, that he had glimpsed her true desires the previous night. Later, at college, Minyong was standing in the hallway, lost in her own thoughts. Tjun approached from behind, noting how often they seemed to be running into each other these days. He suggested that it was probably because they were taking similar courses, and she agreed with a small smile. He asked if she would like to have lunch together, and she accepted. They entered the elevator, which was crowded with many other students. Tjun instinctively moved closer, subtly shielding her, and asked if she was all right. She replied that she was fine, though inwardly, she felt a sense of suffocation as her chest tightened from the press of the crowd. His presence against her made it difficult to breathe fully, but she did not protest. At that moment, a status window appeared in Tjun's mind, revealing her unspoken desire that she wanted him to press more firmly against the wall. Tjun paused, considering whether he could act on this subtle invitation. Slowly, he moved closer, making her slightly uncomfortable, though he remained aware of boundaries. He reassured her softly, asking her to hold on a moment as the elevator approached their floor. When the doors finally opened, they stepped out together. Tjun commented on how crowded and challenging the elevator ride had been and checked once more to see if she was all right. Minyong, feeling exhausted, explained that she needed to stop by somewhere briefly and suggested he go ahead to the restaurant and wait for her. She then went into the restroom, reflecting quietly on how her body had been reacting strangely lately and, out of habit, began strengthening her finger muscles. After they had eaten, both prepared to leave the restaurant. Tjun complimented the meal, noting how satisfying it had been, while Minyong agreed, mentioning that it had been both tasty and affordable. Tjun suggested that they return in the future if they had another group assignment to work on, and she nodded in agreement. As they reached the elevator again, the status window appeared once more, revealing her unspoken desire for more physical closeness. Taejin acknowledged it silently, his expression thoughtful, and suggested they head on, to which she agreed without hesitation. The next day, during dinner at the restaurant, Taejin sat across from Choi Yojin as the waiter brought their food, politely informing them that this was their order. Taejin thanked the waiter with a polite nod, while Yojin seemed completely absorbed in her own thoughts. She reflected on the fact that she had not spoken to him since a night that had left her both unsettled and contemplative. She remembered deliberately working overtime, hoping to avoid an unplanned encounter with him, though she admitted to herself that avoiding him had not eased the tension she felt. Despite her conscious efforts to appear calm, a part of her remained unprepared to confront her feelings or to engage with him fully in the present moment. Suddenly, Taejin's voice drew her attention back. He asked why she no longer arrived early, as she had before, and whether this change had anything to do with him. He spoke cautiously, suggesting that it might be related to whatever had happened between them, and gently asked if it made her uncomfortable. Yojin quickly reassured him, explaining that she had simply been busy with work and wanted to be truthful, emphasizing that there was no personal issue. Taejin then revealed that he intended to move out, which caught her completely off guard. He explained that he planned to stay at a friend's house for the time being. Yojin reminded him of his earlier statement when he had insisted that he would not move out, and he responded by recalling the night she had come home drunk. He admitted that he probably should not have insisted on doing wholesome cardio training with her that night, and she noted quietly that she had pushed herself to do it despite his concerns. Taejin apologized sincerely, and at that moment, Yojin felt the subtle, bittersweet realization that he might soon be leaving. As she sat there, Choi Yojin's mind wandered to a memory from the past. She remembered sitting with her older sister, who handed her a plane ticket to Japan. Her sister had reminded her that she had always wanted to go there and encouraged her to take a proper trip with her husband. She had expressed heartfelt gratitude for all Yojin had done, particularly in taking care of their mother, and suggested that their mother must be feeling lonely at home. She encouraged Yojin to visit, emphasizing the importance of balancing care for family and personal happiness. Taejin's mother, the older sister, thanked her warmly, promising that the trip would be full of joy and assuring her that she would find someone to watch Taejin for a short while. She remarked on how successful her younger sister must have become, though Yojin modestly brushed off the praise, wishing her a wonderful trip nonetheless. The following day, Yojin found herself immersed in work at the office. An employee approached, handing her the report she had requested. She thanked them politely, promising to review it immediately and to check back with them later that afternoon. As she turned back to her tasks, her phone rang suddenly. It was a call from a top hospital, and the person on the line asked directly about her relationship with Seo. Choi Yojin had answered the call, identifying herself as the younger sister, and asked if anything serious had happened. The voice on the other end informed her that her family had been in a car accident and were unconscious. The doctor explained that their condition was critical and that it was likely they might not survive without immediate surgery. He urgently requested the consent of a family member for the operation. The words hit Yojin like a blow, and her mobile phone slipped from her hand, falling to the floor as extreme shock washed over her. Returning to the present, after finishing their meal, the two of them left the restaurant together. Taejin remarked that food always seemed to taste better when shared, and Yojin's thoughts immediately returned to her resolve. She could not allow him to leave her like this. She knew how difficult it was to repair strained relationships, even with family, but she understood she had to hold on to him no matter what. As Taejin prepared to leave, telling her to be safe on her way home, Yojin instinctively grabbed his arm. She explained that she had genuinely been unable to come home early because work had been so busy and asked him to believe her. She suggested that, since it was already late, they should go home together. Taejin, smiling gently, acknowledged her words and asked her to let go of his arm. She apologized, and he reassured her that it was fine. Observing him, she noticed a subtle excitement in his expression, even while they were standing outside, and wondered quietly if it might have been because of her. Yojin asked him if he had been struggling, mentioning the wholesome cardio training and offering her help, promising that she would assist him in any way possible. Without another word, they both moved behind the bushes and began their wholesome cardio training together. The rhythm of their movements, the shared effort, and the closeness deepened the bond between them. Once they finished, Yojin suggested that it was time to go home. The following day, Taejin sat in class, seemingly distracted. Two of his classmates noticed and asked if he had been daydreaming again, noting that it had been happening a lot lately and suggesting that he might be tired. Taejin shook his head, insisting that it was not the case. Yet, deep inside, he reflected that the events of the previous day almost felt like a dream, a feeling amplified by the fact that Choi Yojin had left for a work trip immediately afterward. He could not help but think about the wholesome cardio training they had done together, and how extraordinary it had been to share that experience with her. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a girl entering the department. People around him whispered about her beauty, some noting that there had never been anyone like her in the department, while others speculated that she might be new. The girl approached Tjun and two other students, greeting them with a polite hello. When he turned to look at her, he realized that it was Minyong, now appearing in a completely modern and stylish look. Everyone present was visibly surprised, stunned by the transformation and presence she radiated. Everyone around Park Minyong couldn't help but talk about her, whispering among themselves as their eyes lingered on her figure. They remarked on how drastically different she looked, some even admitting that they barely recognized her at first glance. It seemed impossible to believe that the same girl they had seen every day could suddenly appear so striking. Several of them confessed in hushed tones that they had no idea she was that pretty, expressing genuine surprise at the transformation. Her absence of glasses made a remarkable difference. Her features were no longer obscured, and her face appeared more cute. Another girl, unable to contain her admiration, spoke up and complimented Minyong directly. She encouraged her to dress this way more often, insisting that she had been hiding her beauty all along and that such a style truly suited her. Minyong smiled politely at the praise. Meanwhile, Tjun remained seated nearby, quietly observing the scene. He was absorbed in thought, reflecting on what he had just witnessed. He realized that he had previously assumed Minyong might look nicer if she dressed differently, but he had never anticipated the level of transformation he was now seeing. The clothes she wore accentuated her figure and complexion, enhancing her natural charm in a way he had not imagined possible. Her cute face, once partially hidden behind glasses, was now fully visible. Suddenly, the door of the classroom opened, and a professor stepped in. The professor's voice cut through the low murmur of conversations, instructing everyone to take their seats and settle down for the class. Tjun remained in his seat, still unable to divert his attention from Minyong. He pondered quietly, wondering why she had suddenly begun dressing in this manner. Just then, his gaze fell upon her status window, where she had written a personal wish. He understood immediately that she had hoped he would find her attractive, while she simultaneously worried about appearing odd or out of place. Tjun reassured himself internally, noting that nothing about her looked strange, and on the contrary, everything suited her perfectly. Minyong's mind drifted back to a conversation from a few days earlier. She had been sitting with her group mates when one of the girls had expressed envy at how close she seemed to be getting to Tjun. Initially, Minyong had not understood what they meant by that, but the girl continued, explaining that she herself wanted to get closer to him. She described how difficult it seemed to simply be around him naturally, how impossible it felt to catch his attention without feeling awkward. Another girl nodded, adding that Tjun was smart and handsome, which made her feel insecure and inadequate by comparison. A third girl affirmed that she shared the same feelings, agreeing wholeheartedly. Thinking back, Minyong realized that while Tjun had always been kind and considerate toward her, she had felt comparatively insignificant in his presence. She judged herself harshly, believing she looked unremarkable, almost pathetic, when measured against him. Determined to change this perception and to feel more confident around him, she decided to take control of her appearance. She researched fashion online, browsing through countless options until she identified an outfit that seemed perfect. After carefully selecting the clothes, she purchased them and planned her transformation meticulously. 2 days later, she arrived at the scene fully prepared and completely changed, her appearance now commanding attention wherever she went. Later that night, a freshman party was underway. The host, aware that the event had started a bit late, welcomed everyone warmly, encouraging them to relax and enjoy the freshman welcome party. Guests had gathered around the food and started eating. A boy was carefully pouring a drink for Minyong, and she politely thanked him with a soft smile. He reminded her gently that she needed to take the first shot, encouraging her to start. Tjun was sitting nearby, quietly observing the interaction, as the group around them raised their glasses and cheered together. She commented that how terrible the taste had been. The boy then turned his attention back to Minyong and asked if it was her first time drinking. She looked at him and admitted that it was indeed her first experience. Encouraged by the mood of the group, someone suggested they keep the energy going and offered another shot. Tjun, noticing how quickly she was drinking, cautioned Minyong to slow down a little. She lifted her glass toward him with a playful grin and said, "Cheers." Tjun chuckled softly, and together, they continued drinking, the clinking of glasses echoing softly through the lively atmosphere. After a few moments, Minyong remarked with a sense of pride that now, having started drinking, she truly felt like a university student, fully part of the social scene around her. As time passed and the alcohol took effect, Minyong became noticeably drunk. She leaned slightly toward Tjun, her speech slurred but earnest, and asked him if he thought she was really pretty. Tjun's concern was immediate, and he asked her carefully if she was okay, worried about her condition. She, however, insisted that he not change the topic, pointing out how much effort she had put into dressing beautifully for the night. Taejin, noticing her unsteady state, suggested that she stop drinking for now, reminding her that she was clearly very drunk and that it would be safer if they headed out together. Nearby, another girl had been observing the scene and made a comment, teasing that it seemed there was something going on between Taejin and Minyong. She assumed that they must be very close if he was going to walk her home. Taejin quickly reassured her, saying that there was nothing romantic between them, that they were simply friends. Meanwhile, Minyong, now completely inebriated, exclaimed loudly that the drinking must be some kind of daily war, a playful complaint about how the alcohol made her feel. She then began removing her upper clothing, her movements unsteady. The other boys standing around could not help but stare, hoping for a glimpse of her vulnerability in that moment. Taejin, however, caught sight of her status window on her phone, where she had written about her desire to perform wholesome cardio training with him. Concerned, he told her gently that she had drunk too much and should put her clothes back on properly. She looked at him intently, her expression stubborn but slightly pleading, insisting that she did not want to go home. Taejin tried to reason with her, suggesting he step away briefly to give her a moment to settle down, but she stopped him, declaring that she would not let him go until he listened to her completely. In her drunken state, she began apologizing, remembering that she had accidentally spilled a drink on his clothes. Taejin immediately reassured her that it was fine, that there was no need to worry. She insisted, however, that she should help clean him. Taejin, realizing the large crowd surrounding them and the potential for chaos if they lingered any longer, instinctively reached for Minyong's hand. Without waiting for her response, he began guiding her through the throng of people. Minyong, swaying slightly from the effects of alcohol, tried to protest, explaining that she was feeling dizzy and unsteady, her words slurring slightly. However, Taejin did not let go or slow his pace, and he kept moving, ensuring her safety while silently vowing to get her home without incident. As they approached her street, Taejin paused for a moment to check if they were heading in the right direction. Minyong, though unsteady, managed to give clear directions, assuring him that they only needed to turn onto the next street. Taejin nodded, mentally noting her instructions, and his attention immediately shifted to her physical well-being. He asked if her ankle was okay, showing genuine concern for any potential injury. Minyong quickly reassured him, insisting that her ankle was perfectly fine and that nothing was wrong. Taejin apologized for having pulled her so hard. Internally, he reflected on his actions, realizing he hadn't intended to act in such a forceful, protective way, yet he couldn't help the strong impulse to look after her. Minyong, in turn, admitted that the situation was her own fault. She had insisted on drinking more than she could handle, and she felt slightly embarrassed by her inability to control herself. Speaking softly, she apologized again, acknowledging that she must have appeared clumsy and overly excited, particularly because she had never experienced this much attention from someone before. Taejin, observing her expressions and hearing her words, felt a gentle warmth inside. He told her it had been genuinely nice to see her so happy, but also reminded her to be more careful with alcohol in the future, hinting at the protective concern he always felt toward her. Minyong, in that moment, reflected on how thoughtful he had always been, realizing once again that he cared deeply for her. The fact that he was carrying her home now, despite the circumstances, struck her as both comforting and special. She imagined that if they were ever to start dating, they would be inseparable, even performing their wholesome cardio training together on campus, fully enjoying each other's company. Returning to the present moment, Minyong expressed aloud how much fun she had experienced. Taejin, noticing how tightly she was holding on to him. In her own thoughts, she continued imagining their shared routines, picturing them performing cardio exercises even during class hours. Eventually, they arrived at her house, and Taejin's eyes caught sight of some unusual red toys and other items scattered nearby. Minyong quickly requested that he should close his eyes while she tidied up the mess. After a short while, Taejin explained to her that there was no need to feel stressed about having such items and they were natural for a grown woman, and men often found them appealing. Minyong, slightly hesitant, asked if he truly felt that way. Taejin confirmed, adding that he genuinely liked them. She teased him, asking if he wanted to see more. Before he fully processed the moment, he found himself on her bed, thoughts racing as he considered how extraordinary she was. He reflected on how different she was from the average girl he had known, and yet how endearing it was to see her thoughtful gestures done entirely for him. His admiration grew silently as he watched her, appreciating every detail. Moments later, Minyong appeared before him, wearing a completely different outfit. Without any hesitation, they began performing their wholesome cardio training together. Park Minyong was reflecting on her life and thinking about how she had always been made fun of because of her large balloons. She remembered that the girls at school often asked her to help them get close to the boys who were attracted to Minyong. Because of her body, she felt that she looked very plump, and this made her feel useless and ashamed. She hated her body deeply. On one occasion, when she went to talk to a boy at the request of her friend in order to connect him with that friend, she suddenly realized that the boy was actually attracted to her instead. He began asking her about her hobbies and kept finding ways to talk to her. He asked whether she liked movies and if she wanted to watch a movie with him on the weekend. At that moment, Minyong thought about how much she hated the way people looked at her body. When the conversation ended, her friend came to her and confronted her angrily. Her friend accused her by saying that she had asked Minyong to help her, but instead Minyong had made the boy become interested in her. Her friend began blaming and accusing her for everything. Minyong always felt very bad because people at school constantly spoke negatively about her. They spread rumors that she had tailored her uniform to make herself look more attractive to boys. Because of these accusations and gossip, Minyong started wearing baggy clothes all the time and stayed hidden inside her house, away from everyone. She then thought about how she spent most of her time at home using the internet. While doing so, strange advertisements often popped up on her screen. Sometimes she accidentally clicked on them and ended up watching red movies. At first, she was very shocked by the way the man treated the woman in those movies. However, even though she felt surprised and confused, it also seemed strangely appealing to her. Because of this, she continued watching them. Later, she found herself thinking that she also wanted to perform in the same way she had seen in those movies. Now coming back to the present, she concluded her workout session with Tjun. The following day, Tjun was sitting quietly in the TV lounge while watching his aunt as she moved around the house and carried out all the household tasks. Tjun continued observing her in silence, and as he did so, many thoughts began to trouble his mind. He reflected on how, lately, he had noticed that she had been ignoring him more than before. He wondered if perhaps he had been too forward with her, and if that had caused her to distance herself from him. After thinking carefully, he came to the conclusion that there might be no other way except to increase her dependency on him. As soon as this thought crossed his mind, a status window appeared in front of him, showing her dependency level at only 30%. He stared at the window for a while and thought to himself that he did not know the exact method to raise these statistics. He felt as though he was missing something important, yet he could not understand what it was. After a few moments of reflection, another idea came into his mind. He considered that perhaps getting closer to her emotionally might help a little and could be the first step toward improving the situation. With this decision in mind, he slowly walked toward her and asked in a gentle voice if she needed any help with the work she was doing. His aunt immediately replied that she was fine and that he did not need to assist her because she could complete everything on her own. She spoke calmly, without showing any sign that she needed his support. After hearing her answer, Tjun did not move away at once. Instead, he stood there quietly, looking thoughtful and as if he was deeply planning something in his mind. The following day, in the evening, Yojin was sitting alone at the bus station when heavy rain suddenly began to fall. Surprised by the sudden weather, she softly said that she did not know it was going to rain like this. While she remained standing, unsure of what to do, Tjun appeared there carrying an umbrella. He approached her and asked her to come with him so that she would not get wet in the rain. Without hesitation, she started walking beside him under the umbrella and expressed her gratitude, telling him that he had saved her. She explained that it was very difficult to find a taxi at that hour because of the heavy rain and the late time of the evening. Tjun replied calmly that she could simply call him the next time she faced such a situation. Hearing this, she told him that the rain was falling very hard and suggested that he should move a little closer to her so that both of them could remain under the umbrella properly. As they walked side by side, Tjun thought to himself that it did not seem like she was trying to keep her distance from him anymore. Unlike before, he felt that her behavior was more natural and comfortable than it had been in the past. However, when he checked the status window again, he saw that her dependency level was still the same as before. This made him feel disappointed and confused. He wondered why it had not increased at all, even after spending this moment together. The next day, when he went to college, Tjun continued thinking about everything that had happened. He felt happy because he believed that he was slowly getting closer to her, yet her dependency still showed no sign of change. He reminded himself that he had done many things this week that he thought she would like, including helping her with the housework and trying to support her in small ways. These thoughts made him question whether her dependency level was truly as important as he had believed earlier. Suddenly, while he was still lost in these thoughts, a beautiful girl entered the classroom. The moment she appeared, all the students began whispering and talking among themselves. Some of them looked at her with surprise, while others commented on how striking her appearance was. None of the students knew her identity, yet they continued to speak about her beauty. One of the boys in the classroom raised his hand and asked where the professor was. The new woman standing in front of them replied calmly that the professor had to take a leave of absence due to some family problems. She explained that for the rest of the semester, she would be the one teaching this course. After saying this, she introduced herself to the class and told them that her name was Song Yoon-K. Two students sitting nearby began whispering to each other. One of them complained that the old professor used to give easy A grades, and now things might become difficult. The other student replied that they should not worry too much, and added that he liked the new teacher better. Meanwhile, Song Eun-chae stood firmly in front of the class and announced that they should start the lesson now and asked everyone to pay attention. Another boy spoke up and said that perhaps they were supposed to have an orientation day instead of beginning the class directly. She agreed that today was meant to be an orientation day, and then asked the students if they understood the meaning of orientation. As she spoke, her expression slowly became more serious and angry. She explained that the purpose of orientation was to help students understand the course and its expectations through explanation and introduction. She added that she had already explained the situation and introduced herself, and she believed that this was more than enough for an orientation. She then said that she would now take attendance and begin teaching the course. After that, she called out Taejin's name during attendance. Taejin, who was sitting quietly at his desk, replied that he was present. She then warned the entire class to pay close attention from that moment onward. She explained that she would take attendance twice in every class, once at the beginning and once at the end, and told them to make sure they were not marked absent under any circumstances. Hearing this, many students became irritated and furious in their thoughts. Some of them began thinking that they should transfer out of this course immediately. One student silently complained that he had only chosen this course so that he could skip classes easily. Taejin also looked worried and thought to himself that he had taken this course only because he expected it to be easy and to receive a good grade without much effort. In the evening, when Taejin returned home, he saw his aunt busy with household chores. She asked him if he could help her with some of the work. Taejin agreed and began assisting her quietly. While helping her, he kept thinking about how her dependency level had not changed in days. This made him feel frustrated and confused, and he wondered what he should do next. He felt as though he did not know how to move forward anymore. At that moment, his aunt was standing on a stool while trying to reach something from the upper area. Taejin held the stool firmly to support her so that she would not lose her balance. As she continued looking for the item above, Taejin stood there holding the stool and silently thinking about his next plan. Suddenly, Taejin reached out and grabbed her cake. Because of this unexpected movement, she scolded him sharply and almost lost her balance on the stool. For a brief moment, it seemed as though she might fall, which made the situation tense and serious. Taejin immediately realized what had just happened. At that moment, a thought crossed his mind that perhaps his plan was finally beginning to work. When he checked the status window, he saw that her dependency level had now increased to 50%. This made him feel slightly hopeful. He reflected that, although the progress was slow, he was at least making some effort and seeing a small change. He believed that step by step, his actions were helping to raise her dependency, even if the improvement was not very fast. After that incident, Taejin began performing cardio training with her. During this, she started thinking deeply about her own life. She reflected that being busy every single day left her with no time to meet other men, and because of this, she had naturally lost interest in them. Her schedule had become full, and her focus had shifted away from dating or forming romantic connections. She then remembered an earlier day when she had been working in an office and received a call from a man she was supposed to meet on a blind date. At that time, she had declined the call because she did not feel like talking to anyone. Later, she also realized that when her friend called her while she was on her way back home, the topic again turned to relationships. Her friend asked her about the man she had introduced to Minyong the last time they spoke. In response, Minyong clearly said that she did not want to date anymore. Her friend then questioned her, asking if she wanted to live alone forever. Minyong answered briefly and firmly, saying that she was hanging up the call. Shortly after that, she suddenly noticed Taejin standing outside the house. Seeing him there surprised her, and she asked him why he was standing outside, pointing out that it was quite far from his place. Taejin replied that he had just come home and knew that she would arrive there soon. Even though she listened to his explanation, she thought to herself that it did not really matter. She then spoke aloud and told him that it was fine and that he should come inside. She added that she would prepare something delicious for dinner. At that moment, she realized that she already had Taejin and her family around her, and because of that, she did not want any other men in her life. After that, she concluded her thoughts during the training session. The next day, Taejin went to the grocery store while thinking to himself that he did not know if she wanted him to buy something special. In his mind, he reflected that he still did not truly understand what dependency meant, yet he felt that it did not matter very much at that moment because he had managed to get close to her again. He continued thinking about the previous time when he had been the one who initiated everything between them and how she had responded with a secret signal. This made him believe that he should now be able to perform the workout sessions with her anytime he wanted. However, he immediately reminded himself that he should not be so impatient. He realized that he needed to give her enough time to become comfortable with everything and to slowly get used to his presence. While he was still lost in these thoughts, An apple suddenly dropped from a girl's basket in the store and rolled onto the floor. Tjun quickly picked up the apple so that he could return it to her. When the girl turned around to receive it, it was Song Eun-chae. She politely said thanks to him, and at the same time, he kept looking at her face with confusion. He felt that she looked very familiar, yet he could not immediately recognize where he had seen her before. The next day, Tjun went to college and saw that she was already standing in front of the classroom, giving a lecture to his class. At that moment, he realized that the woman he had met at the grocery store was the new professor. He thought to himself that he had not been able to recognize her earlier because her attitude had been completely different. In the grocery store, she had seemed simple and ordinary, but now in the classroom, she appeared confident and serious. To him, she looked like a completely different person, as if she belonged to another world compared to her usual appearance. After concluding the lesson, she announced that she would wrap up the class early that day and praised the students for their work. The boys in the classroom immediately began talking to each other in low voices. One of them wondered if she was planning something unusual, while another replied that she always taught until the very last minute and that this behavior seemed strange. Tjun, who was sitting quietly at his desk, thought to himself that it did not really matter to him either way. Suddenly, Minyong, who was sitting beside him, turned toward him and asked if he was busy after class that day. Tjun answered that he did not have anything important to do. Hearing this, Minyong told him that it was lunchtime and that she was free, so she wanted to ask him if he would like to go out for lunch with her. Tjun agreed without hesitation. After the class ended, both of them walked out of the classroom together to go for lunch. As they walked side by side, Minyong began thinking to herself that it had been a long time since they had been alone like this. She felt her heart beating very fast inside her chest, and she tried to calm herself by telling herself that everything would be fine. She reminded herself that she had practiced for this moment for a long time, and that all she needed to do now was to carry the conversation naturally, as if everything was normal. In the hallway, Minyong asked Tjun if he wanted anything special for lunch. Tjun replied that there was a new curry place at the back of the entrance and suggested that they should go there together. Minyong agreed immediately and said that it sounded like a great idea. Then she added that the weather was also very nice that day. Tjun nodded and agreed with her. After saying that, Minyong suddenly felt embarrassed and awkward. Inside her mind, she began thinking that she could not carry the conversation any further and did not know what else she should talk about. She felt nervous because she did not want the silence between them to become uncomfortable. At that moment, they suddenly heard a voice coming from the nearby stairs. It was Song Eun-chae, their professor, who was talking on the phone with someone. Her voice sounded serious and emotional as she said that the other person should not do this to her and mentioned something about a wedding dress. She continued talking on the phone without noticing them at first. Then, she suddenly felt that someone might be nearby and called out loudly, asking if there was anyone there. Tjun and Minyong did not answer. Tjun immediately thought that if they were discovered, it would look as though they were trying to secretly listen to her private conversation. Minyong looked extremely worried and quietly asked him what they should do next. Tjun replied that they should go somewhere else because the professor was still on the phone. However, they could not move right away and remained hidden. Song Eun-chae paused her conversation for a moment and walked closer to the wall to see if anyone was there. She looked around but was surprised to find no one. In her mind, she thought that she could have sworn there had been someone nearby, but then she brushed the idea away and assumed that she must have imagined it or heard things incorrectly. Meanwhile, Minyong and Tjun stayed where they were. Tjun quietly told Minyong to stay still and remain silent until the professor completely left the place. Minyong, however, felt extremely uncomfortable in that position. She told him not to press against her like that because it made her feel very uneasy and nervous. Her face showed clear discomfort, and she struggled to remain calm while hiding there. After that moment, Minyong suggested that they should continue their workout session together. In the end, instead of going for lunch immediately, they began doing their exercise training in the bathroom while still hiding from the professor. Suddenly, Song Eun-chae was passing by the bathroom where Minyong and Tjun were in the middle of their workout session. As she walked past, she muttered to herself about what she should do if they suddenly informed her that they couldn't make it on time. The thought made her pause briefly. She then realized that it had been her own voice she had heard, and instinctively, she glanced at her phone. Her mind raced as she thought about her wedding dress fitting, realizing that she could not simply cancel it. The stress of balancing both responsibilities weighed on her for a moment. Meanwhile, Tjun quietly asked Minyong to remain silent for a moment. She nodded in agreement, but reminded him that they should continue their exercise. Song Eun-chae's phone rang, pulling her attention back. The caller was asking if she would be interested in taking a higher position for a part-time teaching job. She responded with a quick and eager confirmation, and they mentioned that the contract details would be discussed later. After ending the call, she felt a surge of happiness and excitement. Almost immediately, she picked up her phone again to call her boyfriend, explaining the offer she had received. She assured him that she would adjust her schedule to fit his, acknowledging his busy life, and expressed that making these arrangements properly was important for their future marriage. After finishing the call, Song Eun-chae suddenly became aware of a noise coming from the bathroom. She realized that someone was inside and felt a moment of panic. Thinking quickly, she decided to leave the area immediately. However, almost as soon as she began to walk away, she remembered that she had left her bag behind in the bathroom. Thinking carefully about the noise she had just heard, it sounded unmistakably like a workout session. She was momentarily surprised. In a school, it seemed highly unlikely that anyone would be exercising in the bathroom, yet she felt compelled to check and understand what had been happening. As she approached the bathroom a second time, she caught sight of Tjun and Minyong standing together. Tjun gently asked Minyong if she was feeling all right, and Minyong reassured him with a calm expression, explaining that she was fine and that there was no need for concern. Observing them, Song Eun-chae immediately recognized the two as her students. She had seen them in class multiple times, but watching them emerge from the bathroom together caused her concern to grow. As a responsible professor, she felt she could not ignore the situation and understood that she needed to find out what had happened between them. Later, Song Eun-chae called Tjun into her office. She began by apologizing for summoning him without notice, expressing regret for the suddenness of her request. Tjun, however, quickly reassured her that it was not an issue and that he had not been busy. Feeling a bit more comfortable, she explained that there was something she wished to ask him. However, as she looked at him, she noticed his natural charm and realized why he was popular among the girls, which caused her to feel a sudden sense of timidity. Carefully choosing her words, Song Eun-chae asked Tjun if he was particularly close to Minyong. She explained that she had considered making Minyong her teaching assistant, but had some concerns regarding the way the two of them interacted. She mentioned that they appeared very close during their cardio training sessions, and she hesitated before asking if Minyong had recently been injured, noting that she had seemed to struggle while walking around the school. Tjun's expression began to change noticeably at that point, and Song Eun-chae immediately realized that he was becoming defensive. Internally, she recognized that she might be onto something significant and decided that she needed to investigate further, while also being cautious not to alert him. She pressed on, asking why he was not responding and if there was something wrong. In her mind, she was trying to piece together exactly what had happened between the two of them. Tjun was standing there, unable to understand why Song Eun-chae's desire had suddenly popped up out of nowhere. He reflected on the fact that he had never even interacted with her before. She called out his name once again and asked how Minyong was doing. Tjun responded calmly, saying that he thought she was doing fine. She continued the conversation, and he mentioned that he would ask the rest of the questions later, and then gently inquired about how his campus life was going these days. As he glanced at the status window, he could sense her thoughts through the small hints she had left that she seemed certain that he had somehow forced Minyong into doing the exercise training with him. She appeared to long for that experience herself, secretly wishing that someone would engage in the training with her as well. All of these realizations, combined, completely caught him off guard. Tjun, still processing everything, replied to her politely that he was doing well. The professor, observing the interaction, indicated that she understood the situation and told him he could leave now. Upon leaving the professor's office, Tjun walked slowly, lost in thought, reflecting on the entire sequence of events. He realized that nothing like this had ever happened to him before. On top of that, he considered the possibility that the professor might already know about his involvement in the cardio training with Minyong. This thought made him realize that he now needed to carefully plan. Later that night, Song Eun-chae returned to her house. She began changing her clothes, her mind wandering as she contemplated the behavior of young people these days. She acknowledged silently that while they were indeed young, some of the things they did, like performing intense training sessions on a university campus, felt somewhat awkward to her. Nevertheless, she reasoned that this was simply a part of youth, a phase of life full of energy and unique experiences. Her attention then drifted toward a photo frame sitting on the dresser, containing a picture of herself and her husband from earlier days. Looking at the photograph, she remembered a time when they had been full of life and shared such a time together. Suddenly, her husband entered the home, looking visibly exhausted from the day's events. She observed him carefully and asked if he had just returned home. He looked at her, taking in her charming appearance, and she gently suggested that he must be tired and that they should have dinner soon. However, he expressed a desire to perform a cardio training session with her immediately. Despite his fatigue, she smiled and told him to take a shower first, assuring him that she would be waiting for him in the room. Once he joined her, they began their exercise session in the room. As they started, he admitted that he was feeling extremely exhausted, reflecting aloud that his recent workload had been so intense that it was affecting his energy and excitement levels. Song Eun-chae listened patiently and responded kindly, suggesting that it was all right and that they could simply have dinner instead. The following day, as she walked through the university corridor, Song Eun-chae's mind was filled with thoughts about the future. She reminded herself that everything they were doing now was for their long-term benefit, yet she also felt a twinge of frustration. It had been so many consecutive days since she had performed cardio training with him. She even recalled turning down a full-time professor position to make time for him, a decision that now made her reflect on how unproductive her workout life had become. Quickly, she tried to shift her mindset, realizing that dwelling on these frustrations was unhelpful. Instead, she reminded herself that they were both facing their struggles together. As she was passing by the bathroom, Song Eun-chae suddenly heard some noises, and her thoughts immediately stirred. She reminded herself that, after she had spoken to Tjun, he was not supposed to perform cardio training in this area. Yet, it seemed he had started the session anyway, and she was internally frustrated, thinking that they could not be doing that kind of training on a campus. Gathering her courage, she slowly opened the door and was utterly shocked to see Tjun and Minyong engaged in a full workout session. Song Eun-chae's mind raced. She thought to herself that she did not want to make a big deal out of this, but the fact that he completely ignored her instructions was unacceptable. She decided that she would not let this slide this time, and resolved to report the incident to the office. However, she hesitated momentarily and ended up hiding nearby, quietly observing both of them as they exercised. After a while, Tjun seemed to notice her presence. He realized that Professor Song Eun-chae was watching them, and a familiar thought crossed his mind that her status window and desire had suddenly popped into his head again. He considered that perhaps she too wanted to engage in cardio training with him, and the idea made him pause briefly. Suddenly, Song Eun-chae's phone rang. It was her husband. She answered, and he explained that he would be coming home late because of work. She responded gently, remarking that he was working again, and asked if he would at least come home later. He replied that he would likely need to sleep at the office and that she should not wait for him, telling her to go to bed by herself. She acknowledged this calmly, thinking to herself that her husband was working hard for her, while here she was, fretting over what seemed now like a trivial matter. She resolved that she needed to let go and forget about the incident entirely. A few days later, Song Eun-chae was in her office, focused on completing some tasks, when there was a knock at the door. Looking up, she saw Minyong standing there and asking politely if she could come inside. Song Eun-chae nodded and granted permission. Minyong then inquired if the professor wanted to see her for an interview. Song Eun-chae studied her for a moment, noticing how innocent her face appeared. Yet, her mind wandered back briefly to a few days ago, recalling the surprising image of Minyong engaging in intense cardio training. She reminded herself firmly that she had decided to forget about that moment and that she should stop dwelling on it. Song Eun-chae invited Minyong to sit down. She explained that the reason she had called her over was to discuss the position of teaching assistant, a role that had recently become available. She mentioned that Tjun had personally recommended Minyong for the position, and then carefully asked whether Minyong would be interested in taking it on. Minyong's face immediately brightened as she responded enthusiastically that she absolutely wanted to do it. Song Eun-chae smiled warmly, expressing how glad she was to hear that. She also admitted feeling slightly guilty for keeping Minyong out so late, and as a small gesture of apology, offered to buy her dinner as a way of making it up to her. Minyong paused briefly, hesitating before saying that her friend was waiting for her. Sensing the hesitation and wanting to make Minyong feel comfortable, Song Eun-chae suggested that she could bring her friend along, asking politely what her friend's name was. Watching the subtle hesitation on Minyong's face, Song Eun-chae quickly realized that the friend was a boy. Without missing a beat, added that he was welcome to join as well. Minyong expressed her gratitude, thanking the professor for being so considerate. As she observed the interaction, Song Eun-chae internally reflected on the situation, thinking that she needed to compose herself and that this dinner could also serve as a way to teach him a small lesson if necessary. After their conversation, the three of them, Minyong, Tjun, and Song Eun-chae, headed to a nearby restaurant for dinner. While sitting together, Tjun glanced at Song Eun-chae and remarked that she seemed to be drinking quite a lot. Song Eun-chae waved off his concern with a casual smile, assuring him that there was no need to worry. She explained that she had actually been waiting for a chance to drink and that this was the perfect opportunity. Tjun, still curious, asked if something specific had happened to her recently. As she considered his question, Song Eun-chae realized with a start that she didn't even have a concrete reason to be there in the first place. She had originally intended to use this situation to teach them a lesson, but instead she found herself drinking alongside them. She silently blamed him for how things had unfolded, recognizing the irony that her plan had completely backfired. Meanwhile, Minyong had become entirely intoxicated, her movements sluggish. Tjun turned his attention to her, concerned, and asked if she was feeling all right. Song Eun-chae, on the other hand, is thinking about something. Every time she looked at him, memories of that day came rushing back, hoping it would help her calm down. Eventually, the alcohol caught up with her, and she drifted into unconsciousness, completely passing out at the table. When she finally awoke, she was disoriented, realizing that she was back in her own home. She tried to remember how she had gotten there, her mind slowly piecing together the events of the previous night. She recalled going out to have drinks with her students. Slowly standing up, she opened the door to her bedroom, assuming that her husband must have been the one to bring her home. She thought about how tired he must be after work, imagining him resting peacefully. She walked closer to him while he slept, quietly wondering if he was truly asleep. Her thoughts wandered to the idea of continuing the cardio training with him. She reasoned that, since they were married, it would not be wrong to take advantage of the opportunity, and there was nothing inappropriate about it. She considered that her husband usually seemed too exhausted to participate in cardio training. But, observing him now, he did not appear particularly tired. She felt a fleeting thought that perhaps she could proceed with the training after all. Her thoughts and reasoning came to an abrupt halt. When reality hit her like a jolt, she realized with horror that it was not her husband lying there at all. It was, in fact, Tjun. Song Eun-chae was genuinely taken aback when she unexpectedly saw Tjun at her house. She could hardly believe her eyes and immediately demanded to know the reason for his presence. Tjun, however, remained calm and told her that she should remember the situation clearly. He explained that after they had finished dinner, her husband had mentioned that it was too late to catch a cab and had suggested that Tjun stay for the night. Eun-chae was completely stunned and instinctively exclaimed that it could not possibly be true. Realizing the awkwardness of the situation, she quickly apologized, her voice tinged with embarrassment and regret, saying that she was sorry for the mistake she had made and asking him politely to leave. Tjun, however, was persistent. He told her that she should have joined him in the cardio training session earlier, insisting that it would have been better if they had done it together. Eun-chae hesitated, telling him that it simply could not be done. Tjun, sensing her worry, reassured her gently, saying that it would be perfectly fine since her husband was extremely busy and had already left for work again. Eun-chae's mind raced as she reflected on her own actions, and even though she had been drunk, she realized with a sinking feeling that she had made a serious mistake in the way she had treated her student. Tjun continued to insist, his calm determination making it difficult for her to refuse. After a moment of hesitation and careful thought, she finally resolved to join him in performing the cardio training session, knowing that resisting further was pointless. Meanwhile, Yojin had been repeatedly trying to reach him by phone, calling over and over, but he had not answered any of her calls. She began to worry that perhaps she was disturbing him, and a sense of guilt washed over her. She thought to herself that she should probably stop calling, considering that he might be extremely busy and she might be interrupting him at a critical moment. She resolved not to bother him any further, and decided that she would simply send him a text message later. As she sat quietly, she reflected on her own overthinking, and realized that she had blown a simple situation out of proportion. If he were to text her, she would not have been holding her breath or anxiously waiting like this. Her thoughts then wandered to a more complicated possibility. He might be spending time with his girlfriend at that very moment. She told herself that this possibility could explain why he had not replied, and reminded herself that she should feel happy for him, rather than anxious or jealous. With that realization, she also concluded that she no longer needed to worry about helping him with the cardio training. She resolved to let go of the past and forget all that had happened. As these thoughts occupied her mind, she unconsciously began strengthening her finger muscles, her mind still lingering on him and the memories they had shared. Choi Yojin's mind then drifted back to a vivid flashback of a time when she and Tjun had gone out for lunch together. She remembered watching him closely, feeling a mix of curiosity and hope, and asking if he liked her that much. She recalled teasing him, saying that he was always staying close to her, and hinting that he would never get a girlfriend. She had also mentioned that it would be more enjoyable to go out without a girlfriend, hoping to see how he would respond. In his calm and measured manner, had simply said that he was not interested in that kind of thing. She remembered feeling her heart race as she asked him, almost shyly, if he wanted to live with her forever, secretly hoping that he would give her the answer she longed to hear. Returning to the present moment, Choi Yojin found herself silently wishing that he would come back soon. The next morning, Tjun entered the house, announcing aloud that he had returned home. As he stepped inside, he reflected on the night he had spent at the professor's place. He realized that he had not even noticed the numerous calls his aunt had made, and it struck him that he had no idea she had called him so many times. The cardio training session with his professor had been so engaging, challenging, and enjoyable that he had become completely absorbed in it, paying no attention to his phone at all. Lost in these thoughts, he suddenly noticed his aunt standing quietly in the kitchen, busy doing dishes. Curious and slightly concerned, he asked her if she had not gone to work yet, but she did not respond immediately. Trying to explain, he said that he had been occupied with an assignment alongside a friend, had become extremely tired, and had simply passed out at the professor's place. As he spoke, He internally considered that she must be genuinely upset with him, which would explain why she had not replied to his calls. He expressed that he had intended to call her first thing in the morning and apologized sincerely for the unexpected situation. Wanting to help, he offered to assist her with the dishes. To his surprise, she responded sharply, asking whether he truly thought he could live in the house entirely on his own without any accountability. Tjun was taken aback by her tone, as he had not expected such a response. She continued, reminding him firmly that he was living in her house and that he should not isolate himself in the dark as if he were completely independent. She stressed that it would not have been difficult for him to make a simple phone call to inform her if he would be late or going out, which would have put her at ease. Tjun reflected on her words and understood her reasoning, realizing why she was upset, though he could sense that her reactions were slightly intense and unusually emotional. She then spoke of how deeply worried she had been throughout the night, and as she expressed her feelings, tears began to form in her eyes. Tjun noticed that something seemed off in her behavior. He realized that she had only intended to scold him lightly, but had become so carried away by her emotions that she could not control herself, despite being his guardian and trying to maintain her composure. She warned him seriously that if he continued to spend nights away without informing her, he might as well consider moving out from the house. At that moment, a status window appeared above her head, clearly showing that she was feeling jealous about the situation. She mentioned that they would discuss everything further once she had finished with the dishes. Observing her busyness and emotional state, Tjun immediately began apologizing once again, promising that he would never repeat the mistake and pleading for her forgiveness this time. Taking a step closer, he held her gently, reassuring her that he had not ignored her calls on purpose. She gestured for him to hold her arm whenever he needed support, reminding him of a secret signal they had created together in the past. Tjun reflected on this and thought that he should not have overanalyzed the gesture. She then gave him a firm sign, telling him that he needed to stop this behavior immediately. She questioned why he had returned to her if he cared so much about his girlfriend, suggesting that he should go back to her instead. Tjun hugged her tightly in response and reassured her that he did not have any girlfriend and that she was the only one for him. Following this heartfelt moment, he suggested that they start performing cardio training together, and they proceeded to enjoy an energetic and productive exercise session. Meanwhile, on the other side of the house, Song Eun-chae lay on her bed, thinking anxiously about the situation. She chastised herself mentally, acknowledging that she had lost her composure and that part of the responsibility was hers. Yet she still believed that she should not have called him to train with her student. The door suddenly opened, and her husband entered the room, asking if she had been sleeping. She replied that she had not, and politely asked whether he needed anything. He admitted that he had not been very attentive to her lately, and recognized that she must be exhausted from preparing for the wedding, offering a sincere apology for his lack of support. She reassured him that she understood, and that it was okay because she knew he had been busy. He insisted that, regardless of his busy schedule, he should have prioritized her more, and expressed sincere remorse for not doing so, emphasizing that planning a wedding was not something she was managing alone. He promised that he would make more effort to help and treat her well once they were married. She gently suggested that he should leave that thought aside for now, and he agreed, acknowledging her request. After this exchange, both of them began performing a workout session together. However, Song Eun-chae did not find the session very enjoyable, though she participated dutifully alongside him. The next day, Tjun and Choi Yojin went into the grocery store together. As they walked down the aisles, Choi Yojin remarked that they should pick up some items for the day, making sure they had everything they would need. She then turned to Tjun and asked whether they should grab some snacks while they were there. Pointing to a particular snack on the shelf, she asked if he would like it. Tjun, noticing that the item was on a higher shelf, said that he could reach it and get it for her. Choi Yojin thanked him warmly and reached for it. As she did, she found herself thinking quietly to herself that she had not spent time with people like this in such a long while, and a small part of her wished she could enjoy every day in such a simple, pleasant way with him. She also noted that she needed the item herself, and silently appreciated how convenient it was to pick things up directly from the store without having to go elsewhere. At that moment, Song Eun-chae unexpectedly appeared in the same aisle, reaching for the very same item. Choi Yojin immediately apologized and offered the item to her, saying that Eun-chae could take it if she wanted. Song Eun-chae politely refused, insisting that Choi Yojin could have it instead. Tjun, standing nearby, then recognized the professor and greeted her politely. Choi Yojin was visibly surprised to see that the person they had encountered was indeed Tjun's professor, and she asked about her out of curiosity. Tjun, standing there with a calm demeanor, inquired whether the professor would be coming along on the summer field trip as well, explaining that they were organizing a summer trip for the school and that she would be accompanying the students. Song Eun-chae could not help but glance at him, feeling a small wave of surprise and amusement. She thought to herself that she must hold back and not allow her thoughts to wander too far, reminding herself to maintain composure in front of him. She confirmed to Tjun that she would be accompanying the students on the trip. Tjun then added that it would be a lot of fun, especially since they would be spending time on the beach, and the students would enjoy it very much. Song Eun-chae internally scolded herself, thinking that she must have lost her mind for being so preoccupied with him right in front of her superior. Choi Yojin, meanwhile, remarked casually that she guessed everyone would be in their bathing suits, imagining the scene of the students enjoying the summer sun and sand. Tjun commented that he might as well buy some swimming trunks while he was there, taking advantage of the opportunity to be fully prepared. Song Eun-chae continued reflecting quietly to herself that she truly would be going on the trip and thought about what that might entail. She observed Tjun as he said goodbye and walked away. Choi Yojin, watching him leave, thought to herself that he was much younger than she had expected, and he possessed an undeniably striking appearance, along with a refined sense of style. She compared that image with herself and could not help but feel that, in comparison, she appeared just like an ordinary, middle-aged woman, perhaps more plain and less stylish. On the other side, Minyong was at home, trying on a series of different dresses, carefully considering which one would be the most appropriate choice for the trip. She reflected that it had been a long time since she had participated in a trip like this, and wondered how she should decide on her outfit. When she tried on one particular dress, she hesitated, thinking that it might be too revealing. She reminded herself that this was her first university field trip, and that she could not afford to embarrass herself in front of her peers. She thought that perhaps there would be a talent show during the trip where everyone would drink and have fun together. Since the trip involved going to the beach, she also recalled seeing in various videos that people on the beach often performed cardio exercises together. She wondered if they would do something similar during this trip, imagining how it might look and how she would feel participating. After that, Minyong realized that she might be overthinking things a little and let out a short, quiet laugh at herself. Later that night, Tjun and Choi Yojin were sitting together at home, having dinner. During the conversation, Choi Yojin commented that Tjun's professor was very beautiful. Tjun agreed, saying that she was indeed beautiful, which explained why she was so popular at the school. Choi Yojin then remarked that the other girls at the school must also be young and pretty. Tjun reassured her, saying that she was the only girl for him and that he would be back, ready for her. Choi Yojin smiled and replied, "Have fun on trip." The next day, the much-anticipated trip finally arrived. All the students were sitting on the bus, chatting excitedly and remarking how much fun the trip would be. One girl mentioned that she had gone on a diet just so she could wear a certain swimsuit, while others joined in conversation, offering snacks to each other and laughing. Tjun was sitting beside Minyong, observing the lively interactions around them. Minyong, however, felt a pang of disappointment. She thought to herself that he did not seem at all interested in her, even though she had dressed up just for him and mustered the courage to sit beside him. He appeared to be talking only with the other students, leaving her feeling invisible. Meanwhile, one of the students noticed Professor Song Eun-chae and mentioned that there was an open seat near her, suggesting that they could talk on the way to the destination. Other students also offered her snacks, but Professor Song politely declined, saying that she was really fine. Some of the students whispered among themselves that she seemed so boring and standoffish, and they had not expected her to come at all. Minyong quietly observed that Professor Song Eun-chae's attention appeared to be on Tjun, not on them, and she tried to shrug off the thought, telling herself that perhaps her eyes were just imagining things. Eventually, the bus reached the destination, and everyone stepped out to the beach. The sun was bright, and the sound of waves filled the air. One of the boys remarked that it had been a long time since he had last been to the beach, and another agreed enthusiastically. As the students looked around, some of the boys glanced at Minyong and commented on how incredible her figure looked, even though she was fully clothed. They noted that she seemed strikingly beautiful despite being covered up. Minyong felt her face heat up at their remarks. She knew she was wearing a bathing suit underneath her clothes, which made her feel self-conscious and embarrassed. As she scanned the beach, her eyes instinctively searched for Tjun, and she thought quietly to herself that she only wanted him to notice her swimsuit, wishing that he alone would see her in that way. Tjun was completely absorbed in taking the luggage off the bus. Minyong noticed how intensely he was focused and realized just how busy he really was. She quietly thought to herself that there would be plenty of time to show him later, and there was no need to rush anything at that moment. Once the luggage was taken care of, all the students around began to gather and started playing volleyball nearby. Feeling encouraged, Minyong decided to join them in the game, even though she couldn't help thinking that she was terrible at dodgeball. She also observed, with a little pang of self-consciousness, that she wasn't even on the same team as Tjun, which made her feel slightly awkward. During the game, Tjun told her, in a playful tone, that he was going to throw the ball at her. Minyong responded honestly, saying that she wasn't good at all and might not be able to catch it. Despite her warning, Tjun threw the ball with force, and it hit her squarely, causing her to fall onto the ground. Immediately, all the boys nearby turned their attention toward her, their expressions filled with concern, and they asked if she was all right. Trying to hide her embarrassment, she quickly reassured them that she was fine. However, internally, she felt extremely flustered. Realizing that everyone's gaze was on her at that moment, she wondered, with a mix of anxiety and self-consciousness, whether Tjun had noticed her fall. But as she looked over, she saw that he was still busy with his team, deeply engaged in the game. This observation made her come to the conclusion that he didn't seem to care about her at all. After a little while, Tjun approached her, asking gently if she was okay. Minyong responded, explaining that she thought she might have gotten something on herself when she fell, and she hesitantly asked if he could take a look to help her. She lifted her jacket slightly, revealing her bathing suit, subtly showing him the fabric to give him a better view. At that precise moment, a status window appeared, signaling her inner desire, and she silently wished that he would notice only her in every situation, hoping that his attention would be focused on her alone. She then asked him if he liked the dress, seeking his opinion, and he initially replied that he didn't see anything. After a brief pause, however, he finally commented that her bathing suit looked great on her, but he suggested that she put her jacket back on because everyone around was watching. Minyong thanked him softly, feeling a mix of relief and excitement, and she couldn't help thinking to herself that he had actually been considering her in that moment. She asked him if she could sit beside him during dinner, and he agreed without hesitation, saying that it was okay. Meanwhile, Song Eunchae appeared visibly disappointed as she took in the view of the beach. Her expression showed that she was unsettled by the scene, and she addressed the students in a calm but slightly weary tone, telling them that she was heading back and instructing them to inform her if anything came up while she was gone. The students responded politely and attentively, assuring her that they would, saying yes, Professor. After finishing her instructions, Song Eunchae excused herself and went into the restroom. Once inside, she began to reflect on the events of the day and on her feelings, feeling physically and emotionally exhausted. As she removed her clothes, she thought to herself that she had expected Tjun to reflect on whatever had happened between them, but it seemed clear that he did not care at all. A wave of frustration and self-reproach washed over her as she realized that she had been the only one invested in the situation. She berated herself silently, thinking that she had been foolish to place any importance on it, wondering if it meant nothing to him at all. Perhaps he had even told someone else about it, she considered. And with that thought, she resolved that she should simply forget about it and not waste any more time dwelling on the matter. Suddenly, she was startled to see Taejin open the door and enter the room. Shocked and immediately alarmed, she began shouting at him, her voice rising in anger and disbelief. She demanded that he get out of the room at once. Taejin quickly apologized, his tone sincere, saying that he was truly sorry. She responded sharply, scolding him for entering the women's room without knocking, emphasizing that he should have respected the space and boundaries. After a moment, realizing she was now dressed, she told him that he could come in and asked him directly why he had come there in the first place. Her tone was accusatory, insisting that he not make any dumb excuses, pointing out that he had chosen to come when she was completely alone. Taejin tried to explain, saying that he had gotten lost or had some urgent reason to bring someone's luggage over. He apologized again, admitting that he had not expected anyone to be in the room at that moment. She asked him skeptically if he had truly lost his way, while in her mind reflecting that she had been the only one who had taken the events between them seriously, and that he seemed completely indifferent to everything that had occurred. Taejin said goodbye, preparing to leave, which only increased her frustration, as she had wanted to talk through everything that had happened between them. At that moment, the status window appeared again, showing her desire, signaling that she wanted to perform the cardio training with Taejin and Minyong. She took a deep breath and began to explain, emphasizing that every incident that had happened between them before had been accidental, and that she wanted him to understand clearly, not to get the wrong idea about it. Taejin, however, told her that she was the one with the wrong idea, which left her feeling confused and slightly unsettled. He reassured her that, since she wanted to keep their interactions a secret, he would not tell anyone about it. She insisted firmly that he keep his promise regarding that secrecy, her tone carrying both insistence and relief. In response, Taejin said that in exchange, he wanted to perform the exercise session with her. Song Eunchae immediately felt a wave of anxiety when Taejin made his offer. She could not help but question him inwardly, wondering if he was attempting to blackmail her. Her mind raced as she tried to interpret his intentions. Taejin, noticing her tension, spoke calmly, saying that he had thought she enjoyed the workout sessions with him. Eunchae quickly reacted, her voice a mix of frustration and disbelief, insisting that there was no way she had felt that way. She reminded him firmly that she had only helped because he had requested her assistance, and, in her mind, she had assumed he was her husband. She emphasized that nothing beyond that had occurred. Tjun responded with a tone meant to reassure her, explaining that he would not ask for anything beyond the cardio training sessions. He elaborated that as long as she continued to perform the exercises with him, he would behave as if nothing had happened between them. He made it clear that his proposal was purely practical, a solution designed to help her, and nothing more. Despite his words, Aunty could not shake off her suspicion. A small part of her still feared that he might be planning to blackmail her. Yet, thinking strategically, she decided that the best way to protect herself was to continue training with him. With this decision firm in her mind, she joined him. Together, they began the workout session. As they were immersed in the training, Taejin's phone rang. Outside, his friend called, demanding to know why he was taking so long and urging him to come out immediately. The friend reminded him that they had planned to hang out together and that he should not keep them waiting. Taejin, thinking quickly, made an excuse. He claimed that he was not feeling well and needed a bit more time to rest. His friend, concerned, asked if he was all right, and Taejin replied that a short rest would help him feel better. Understanding his explanation, the friend accepted it and eventually left, allowing Taejin to return fully to the exercises with Aunty. Suddenly, Minyong happened to be near the outside of the room. Curious and hoping to catch a glimpse or hear something, he began to search the surrounding area carefully, looking for any sign of Taejin. Inside, Aunty continued to focus on the exercises, but worry crept into her mind. She quickly asked Taejin if he had locked the door, only to be met with his uncertain response that he could not remember. Anxiety surged within her as she realized the vulnerability of their situation. She instructed him to move aside while she went to secure the door herself. As she moved to lock it, she scolded him sharply, chastising him for being so careless about the door. But in that moment, a new realization struck her, that if Minyong were to open the door now, he would discover her performing the cardio training with her student. Panic rose in her chest as she imagined the consequences. She thought about the confrontation that might follow, worried that her husband might learn about it and leave her. She silently hoped with all her heart that Minyong would not open the door, knowing that her life as she knew it could be jeopardized if he did. Outside, Minyong hesitated, standing in front of the door and recognizing that it was indeed the professor's room. He wondered if he should knock, unsure of what he might find. Tentatively, he knocked on the door but received no response, and he assumed she might be elsewhere. Moments later, he heard a faint, muffled voice of the professor inside. Concerned and slightly unsure, he prepared to open the door, calling out to see if the professor was present. Inside, Aunty, sensing the potential danger, quickly asked if Minyong was outside and whether he had any work with her, silently hoping that he would not enter the room. Minyong, now slightly worried, replied that he could not see Taejin anywhere and inquired if she was all right. He stepped inside cautiously, seeking reassurance. Aunty responded, stating that she was fine, and reminded him that he should look for Taejin somewhere else, as he was not there. Understanding, Minyong apologized quietly for disturbing her and then left the room, allowing her a moment of relief. After completing the workout session, Taejin also left, telling Aunty that he would be waiting for her in the evening. With that, he stepped outside, leaving her alone. Minyong was present with her friend group, but she found herself unable to engage with them. As she glanced around, her thoughts betrayed her frustration. She had been so excited to come on this field trip, yet now the day felt unexpectedly dull and uninteresting. Distracted, she began looking for Taejin, hoping to catch sight of him amidst the crowd. Soon, she noticed Taejin approaching from another direction, accompanied by his friend. His friend immediately inquired about Taejin's whereabouts, and Taejin replied apologetically that he had been occupied with many things. Taejin's friend then brought up the professor, mentioning that she had said she felt tired and had gone to the women's area. He added that he had assumed Taejin might be there to handle some stuff. Hearing this, Minyong was struck with surprise and a sudden pang of shock. The idea that the professor had gone to the women's area unsettled her. Taejin, noticing her reaction, said cautiously that he was not entirely sure and that he had not seen the professor anywhere else. Minyong, now standing alone, she recalled that she had seen the professor earlier in a certain location and wondered if Taejin had lied on purpose. A troubling possibility formed in her mind that perhaps both Taejin and the professor were together in a room, engaged in a workout session. As she wrestled with these ideas, Taejin approached her, his expression showing concern. He asked if she was all right, noting that she did not look well. Minyong quickly replied that she was fine and that there was nothing wrong. Taejin, however, persisted, saying he did not think she had a fever. Minyong responded, insisting that she was really fine, though she admitted inwardly that her cheeks were flushed and she appeared as if she were tipsy. Taejin laughed softly at her comment, telling her to let him know if she felt unwell and to be careful of heat stroke. She nodded, quietly thinking that perhaps he genuinely cared about her. After that, Tjun went to play with his friends in the ocean, leaving Minyong standing there with her thoughts spiraling uncontrollably. She chided herself internally, telling herself she needed to stop thinking about him. After all, it was not as if she were his girlfriend. It should not matter who saw with whom, she was only his friend. Yet, despite her rational reasoning, she could not keep her mind from wandering to the professor and Tjun. She imagined them together, holding on to each other, and felt a rush of flustered emotions. She hated that her imagination ran wild in that way, yet she felt powerless to stop it. Eventually, she stood up and began walking away, her steps hesitant and heavy, while Tjun remained behind, watching her leave. Later in the evening, during a gathering, Minyong paused while sitting with one of the boys. He teased her lightly, commenting that she had been drinking too much. Minyong brushed it off, insisting that it was nothing, though inwardly she reflected on the dullness of the afternoon and how she had failed to enjoy herself. Meanwhile, the boys began whispering among themselves about how Minyong had apparently gotten drunk at the mixer, exaggerating her behavior for amusement. One of them even commented that Tjun and Minyong looked great together, mentioning that he had seen Tjun walk her home. He asked if they were actually dating, noting how close they appeared. The idea flustered Minyong immensely. She immediately denied it internally and reminded herself that she was just going for a walk with him. Her mind continued to churn, embarrassed by the thought that others might see her as Tjun's girlfriend. She chastised herself silently that she needed to stop thinking about him in that way and stop imagining herself as the professor or as someone romantically involved with him. At night, Song Eun-chae quietly made her way to the large rock on the beach. She was wearing the outfit that Tjun had specifically chosen for her, an outfit that made her feel self-conscious yet strangely excited. As she approached, Tjun immediately noticed her and complimented her, telling her that she looked wonderful and that the outfit suited her perfectly. She told him not to say another word and expressed her disbelief that he had made her wear such an outfit. She teased him, calling him very weird for picking it out and making her wear it. He explained earnestly that he had been sincere in his compliment, that he genuinely thought she looked great and had no other motive. Trying to lighten the tension, he reminded her that after this, they could continue counting on their workout sessions together. With that, they began their workout session. At the same time, Minyong was walking quietly in that same area, her heart beating slightly faster as she hoped she might see Tjun. She moved slowly, scanning the surroundings. She suddenly heard a faint voice. She froze for a moment, straining to recognize it, and then realized with a jolt that it was Tjun's voice. She understood that he was with Song Eun-chae. She crouched slightly behind a small rock to listen without being noticed. Tjun spoke to Eun-chae softly, asking if she was okay and reassuring her. He told her that being together like this for a few moments was not a big deal and that it should not worry her. Eun-chae, however, felt a wave of unease wash over her. She responded firmly, telling him that this situation was entirely different from their usual workout sessions. She reminded him sternly that the promise he had made to her earlier was the only reason she had agreed to continue the workout with him, and warned him not to think about using this moment to get closer to her in any personal or inappropriate way. Tjun listened carefully and immediately reassured her. As they were speaking, both of them suddenly noticed Minyong standing not far away. Minyong, trying to maintain a casual tone, commented as if she were merely observing, saying that they must have been out for a walk. Song Eun-chae quickly responded, keeping her composure, confirming that she had indeed been heading back. She politely told them to enjoy themselves, signaling that she was leaving the area. Tjun simply acknowledged her words with a calm okay, and did not press further. While standing there, Minyong's mind flashed back to earlier in the day, replaying the moment when Tjun had lied about not seeing the professor at the resort. Her thoughts tumbled through the memory, and now, seeing the reality unfold before her eyes, she felt a mixture of shock, confusion, and realization. Returning her focus to the present moment, she could not hold back any longer. She remarked aloud that it was so late, and asked them why both of them were together there at that hour on the beach. Song Eun-chae turned to Minyong and told her that they needed to have a discussion if he was thinking about her future. Minyong looked at her, surprised, and asked if she had really come here for that reason. Song Eun-chae quickly replied, trying to clarify, saying that Minyong had misunderstood the situation. She explained that they had only happened to run into each other by chance, and that she had been talking to Tjun about certain issues in her own life. Minyong, still processing the explanation, asked cautiously whether they had really been discussing personal matters. Song Eun-chae immediately realized that she had made an awkward and somewhat unnecessary excuse. She mentally scolded herself, thinking that she should not have chosen to wear such a revealing outfit and that it had only made things more complicated. Trying to end the conversation gracefully, she said that she was leaving now. Minyong felt a twinge of regret and internally reflected that she had not intended to get upset, and she had simply become emotional in the moment. Feeling compelled to make amends, she said softly that she was truly sorry. She admitted that despite everything, Tjun and Song Eun-chae looked nice together, and that the atmosphere between them had been pleasant. Tjun, however, reassured her, saying firmly that there was nothing between them and that she should not misunderstand the situation. He suggested that they should head back as well. Minyong agreed, and the two of them held each other's hands as they made their way back, eventually arriving home and going to sleep. The next day, as they prepared to return, both Minyong and Tjun boarded the bus and sat together. The ride was quiet for a moment, and then Tjun commented that the trip had been a lot of fun. Minyong nodded, agreeing, and he continued, saying that it had been wonderful to see the ocean again after so long. He asked if she had enjoyed it as well, noting that it had been a while since she had experienced something like this. She replied with a small smile that yes, it had been great. Tjun, however, found the moment slightly awkward and thought to himself that he could not let things remain this way for too long. After some time, the bus reached their destination, and Minyong prepared to leave. Tjun stopped her gently, offering to walk her home or perhaps go to a nearby cafe by her house, mentioning that she might enjoy the cake there. He asked if she was hungry and suggested that they could go somewhere else if she wanted. Minyong politely declined, saying that it was fine and that she would go home on her own. Alone, Minyong returned home and lay on her bed, feeling a wave of sadness and frustration. She berated herself internally, thinking that she had been foolish and rude toward him. She reflected that she was not even his girlfriend, yet he had invited her for a conversation and she had cut it short. Feeling regretful and overwhelmed, she admitted silently to herself that she did not know whether she should have gone with him. She worried about what could happen between them if things continued to be awkward. The following day, Tjun was sitting in a cafeteria with his friends. His friends asked him if he was going to eat lunch with them, and he admitted that he did not quite understand the question. One of his friends reminded him that he always seemed to hang out with Minyong, and that both of them had assignments together and often went to cafes. Tjun internally acknowledged that he did spend a lot of time with her, and now it felt strange not to have her around. Suddenly, one of his friends asked if he had seen something on Instagram. He showed Tjun an account called Cosgirl and pulled up a photo on his phone. The images on the account seemed to resemble Minyong in several ways. His friend explained that the account had been uploading pictures of a girl in various costumes, praising her figure, and that people were trying to discover who she really was because she supposedly attended their school. Tjun examined the photos carefully. The background in one of the images looked exactly like the back wall of Minyong's room, and even the way the staff and objects were arranged was remarkably similar. His mind raced as he considered the possibility that this really was her.